The champagne glass slipped from my trembling fingers, shattering against the marble floor of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel's grand ballroom. Around me, 200 wedding guests sat in stunned silence, their confused whispers creating a low buzz that filled the ornate space where my daughter's wedding should have been taking place. The priest stood at the altar, checking his watch for the third time in 10 minutes. The groom's side of the family shifted uncomfortably in their seats, avoiding my eyes. But there was no bride, no daughter, no wedding, just me, standing in a $3,000 tuxedo, realizing that the past 8 months of my life had been an elaborate lie designed to steal $500,000 from a trusting father. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The story began exactly 251 days ago when Rebecca burst through the front door of my Bellevue home, her face glowing with the kind of excitement I hadn't seen since she graduated summa cum laude from Stanford Business School. "Dad, I have the most incredible news." I looked up from the quarterly reports spread across my dining room table. At 61, I'd built Morrison Tech Solutions from a one-man computer repair shop into a company worth $28 million. The dining room had become my unofficial office, where I reviewed contracts and financial statements that kept 180 employees working and their families fed. "What kind of news, sweetheart?" She practically bounced across the hardwood floor, her designer heels clicking with staccato enthusiasm. "I'm engaged, and the man I'm marrying is going to change both our lives forever." The ring was impressive, a 2.3-carat emerald-cut diamond that caught the afternoon light streaming through my windows. Conservative estimate, $15,000, though Rebecca had always had expensive tastes. After her mother died when she was 16, I'd perhaps overcompensated by providing every luxury she requested: private school, European summers, a BMW for her 18th birthday, and unlimited spending during her college years. "Tell me about him," I said, setting down my reading glasses. "His name is Marcus Davidson, and Dad, he's brilliant, an entrepreneur just like you." Rebecca settled into the chair across from me, her eyes sparkling with what I now recognize was practiced enthusiasm. "He's developed this revolutionary app that's going to transform how small businesses manage their inventory systems." Marcus Davidson appeared for dinner 3 nights later, and I was immediately struck by his presence. Tall, confident, with a kind of firm handshake that spoke of serious business training. He wore a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, and his conversation revealed extensive knowledge of tech industry trends and market analysis. "Mr. Morrison," Marcus said, cutting his filet mignon with surgical precision, "Rebecca's told me so much about your success story. Building a tech empire from scratch requires exactly the kind of vision I hope to bring to my own ventures." The flattery felt genuine, backed up by specific questions about my company's growth strategies and client acquisition methods. Most of Rebecca's previous boyfriends had been intimidated by my success or dismissive of business discussions. Marcus engaged with intelligent curiosity and impressive insights. Over the following weeks, Marcus became a regular presence at family dinners and social events. He asked thoughtful questions about my industry experience, shared ambitious plans for his startup, and treated Rebecca with obvious affection and respect. When she looked at him, her face held the same radiant happiness her mother had shown during our courtship 35 years earlier. The resemblance was so strong it sometimes took my breath away. Marcus's business acumen impressed me consistently. During a barbecue in my backyard, he outlined his inventory management software with the kind of detailed technical knowledge that indicated serious development work. The concept was solid, addressing real pain points that small business owners face daily. The market research he'd conducted was thorough, and his projected profit margins seemed realistic rather than wildly optimistic. "I've already secured preliminary agreements with 3 beta testing companies," Marcus explained, showing me professionally designed mock-ups on his tablet. The prototype is functional, but we need additional funding to complete development and launch the marketing campaign. What kind of timeline are you looking at? I asked, genuinely interested in the business potential. 6 months to full launch if we can secure the remaining capital. Marcus's confidence was infectious. Rebecca beamed beside him, clearly proud of her fiancé's ambitions and impressed by his professional presentation. That evening, after they'd left, I found myself researching inventory management software markets. Marcus's projections aligned with industry reports I found. The sector was growing rapidly, and several similar companies had achieved substantial valuations through successful exits to larger corporations. The engagement party took place 6 weeks later at the Seattle Yacht Club, an elegant affair that showcased both families' social connections and financial capabilities. Marcus's parents, Dr. Richard and Patricia Davidson, were sophisticated, well-educated people who owned a successful cardiology practice in Portland. His father and I connected immediately over our shared experiences, building businesses from nothing. During our conversation, Dr. Davidson mentioned Marcus's MBA from Wharton and his previous work with a consulting firm in San Francisco. Everything checked out. Everything seemed perfect. Rebecca moved through the party like a princess, accepting congratulations and showing off her engagement ring to an endless stream of friends and relatives. The happiness in her eyes reminded me so much of her mother that I had to step outside for fresh air twice during the evening. Marcus approached me near the end of the party, his expression shifting to something more serious and businesslike. "Mr. Morrison, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" We moved to a quiet corner of the yacht club's deck, where the sound of water lapping against the marina's boats provided a peaceful backdrop for conversation. I wanted to discuss something important regarding Rebecca's future and our upcoming marriage. "Of course, what's on your mind?" "I've been thinking about the inventory management software project, and I believe it represents an incredible opportunity, not just for me, but for our family." Marcus paused, studying my face carefully. "Rebecca's going to be my wife, which means her security and happiness are my top priorities. This business venture could provide the kind of financial foundation that ensures she never has to worry about money." The conversation continued for 20 minutes, with Marcus outlining his vision for the company's growth and potential acquisition by larger tech firms. His projections showed possible returns of 300 to 500% within 2 years, numbers that seemed aggressive but not impossible in the rapidly expanding software sector. "I've been approached by several potential investors," Marcus continued, "but I'd prefer to keep this opportunity within the family. Rebecca suggested I speak with you about the possibility of becoming our primary investor. The proposal was intriguing both from a business perspective and as a way to support my daughter's future husband. If Marcus succeeded, Rebecca would benefit directly from the financial security his company provided. If the venture failed, I could afford the loss without significant impact on my lifestyle or retirement plans." "How much capital are you looking to raise?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. $500,000 would provide sufficient funding to complete development, conduct proper market testing, and launch our customer acquisition campaign. Marcus pulled out a leather portfolio containing detailed financial projections, market analysis, and development timelines. The documents looked professionally prepared, with charts and graphs that demonstrated serious planning and research. "This isn't just about building a business, Mr. Morrison. This is about creating a legacy that benefits Rebecca and any children we might have." The emotional appeal was effective, but the business case seemed strong enough to stand on its own merits. I promised to review his materials carefully and provide an answer within a week. That evening, I spread Marcus's documents across my dining room table, the same surface where I'd reviewed countless contracts and business proposals over the years. The financial projections were detailed and realistic, The market analysis incorporated data from reputable industry sources. The technical specifications for the software demonstrated genuine understanding of inventory management challenges. Everything appeared legitimate and well-researched. I called my accountant, James Chen, who'd handled my company's finances for 15 years. After reviewing the documents, James expressed cautious optimism about the venture's potential, while noting the inherent risks in any startup investment. "The numbers look solid," he said during our phone conversation. "The market opportunity is real, and the financial projections seem conservative rather than overly ambitious. If you can afford to lose the investment, it might be worth considering." I also consulted with my attorney, Patricia Walsh, who specialized in business contracts and investment agreements. She recommended several modifications to Marcus's proposed partnership structure, including clearer milestone-based funding releases and stronger oversight provisions. But overall, she found no obvious red flags in the legal framework Marcus had outlined. The investment opportunity seemed legitimate from every angle I examined. More importantly, supporting Marcus's venture demonstrated confidence in my future son-in-law and provided tangible assistance for Rebecca's financial security. The decision felt like both sound business judgment and responsible fatherhood. Marcus and Rebecca returned the following Sunday for brunch, both clearly anxious about my decision regarding the investment opportunity. I'd prepared a revised version of the partnership agreement, incorporating my attorney's recommendations and establishing milestone-based funding releases. The modifications would protect my interests while still providing Marcus with the capital he needed for his business launch. After we finished eating, I presented the revised agreement and explained my decision to invest in his company. Rebecca's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. She threw her arms around my neck, tears streaming down her face as she thanked me repeatedly for believing in Marcus and supporting their future together. Marcus's response was more controlled, but equally emotional. He shook my hand with both of his, promising that my confidence in his abilities would be rewarded with both financial returns and the security my daughter deserved. "Mr. Morrison, you won't regret this decision. I'm going to build something extraordinary, and Rebecca will benefit from every success we achieve." The moment felt significant, like I was officially welcoming Marcus into our family, while also making a strategic business investment that could yield substantial returns. We scheduled a meeting with my attorney for the following week to finalize the legal documentation and establish the funding timeline Marcus had requested. The wire transfer went through on a Tuesday morning in March, $500,000 moving from my business account to the newly established Davidson Technologies LLC. Marcus had provided all the necessary banking information and corporate documentation, including articles of incorporation filed with the state of Washington. The business appeared completely legitimate, with proper legal structure and professional banking relationships. I felt good about the transaction, confident that my money was supporting both a promising business venture and my daughter's future happiness. Rebecca called that afternoon to thank me again, her voice filled with excitement about the wedding planning that could now proceed without financial constraints. Wedding preparations consumed the following months with an intensity that surprised me. Rebecca had always been detail-oriented, but her approach to planning this celebration reached almost obsessive levels. Every vendor had to be perfect, every detail meticulously planned and executed. The guest list grew to include business associates, family friends, and social connections from throughout the Pacific Northwest. Marcus supported her vision enthusiastically, contributing ideas and preferences while deferring to her judgment on most decisions. They made a good team, balancing Rebecca's perfectionism with Marcus's easygoing confidence. The venue selection process took 6 weeks and visits to a dozen potential locations before Rebecca settled on the Fairmont Olympic Hotel's Grand Ballroom. The space was magnificent, with soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and enough capacity for the 200 guests they were expecting. The cost was substantial, nearly $40,000 for the reception alone, But Rebecca argued convincingly that our family's reputation demanded an elegant celebration that reflected our social standing. Marcus agreed, noting that many of his business contacts would be attending, and first impressions could influence future professional relationships. Dress shopping became a monthly ritual that Rebecca and I shared, visiting high-end boutiques throughout Seattle and even flying to Los Angeles for appointments at exclusive designers. She finally selected a stunning Vera Wang creation that cost $8,000, but made her look like royalty. When she stepped out of the fitting room, wearing the completed dress, my breath caught in my throat. She looked exactly like her mother had on our wedding day, radiant and perfect and filled with joy. The resemblance was so strong that I had to sit down for a moment, overwhelmed by memories and grief that still surfaced occasionally despite the passing years. The catering decisions required multiple tastings and consultations with the hotel's executive chef. Rebecca insisted on a 7-course dinner with wine pairings, premium ingredients, and presentation that would impress their sophisticated guest list. The florist created elaborate centerpieces with exotic orchids and imported roses. The photographer was a renowned artist whose wedding portfolios commanded premium prices. Every element of the celebration reflected luxury and attention to detail that befitted a family of our social and financial standing. Throughout this period, Marcus provided regular updates on his business development progress. The software was nearing completion according to his reports, with beta testing proceeding smoothly and potential customers expressing strong interest in the final product. He showed me screenshots of the interface and shared positive feedback from the companies participating in the testing program. The technical progress seemed legitimate, and Marcus's enthusiasm remained consistent with someone genuinely excited about his venture's potential success. He often mentioned working late nights and weekends to perfect the product, sacrificing personal time to ensure the company's launch met his ambitious timeline. 2 months before the wedding, Marcus announced that Davidson Technologies had received preliminary acquisition interest from a major software corporation. The details were confidential, he explained, but the potential buyer's initial valuation exceeded his most optimistic projections. If the acquisition proceeded, my investment could return anywhere from $1.5 to $2.5 million, figures that would transform the wedding gift into one of the most successful investments I'd ever made. Rebecca was ecstatic about the news, interpreting it as validation of her fiancé's business acumen and confirmation that their financial future was secure. The bachelor and bachelorette parties took place during the same weekend in Las Vegas, with both events apparently costing more than most people's annual salaries. Rebecca's party involved a private jet, luxury suite at the Bellagio, and entertainment that included celebrity appearances and exclusive restaurant reservations. Marcus's celebration was supposedly more low-key but equally expensive, with golf at exclusive courses and entertainment that he declined to describe in detail. Both returned from Vegas with stories of extravagant fun and deeper friendships with their respective wedding parties. Final wedding preparations intensified during the last month, with Rebecca making daily phone calls to coordinate vendors, confirm timing, and resolve last-minute details. The stress affected her appetite and sleep patterns, but she maintained her enthusiasm for the celebration that was supposed to mark the beginning of her perfect life with Marcus. I helped wherever possible, handling payments and logistics that required significant financial resources or business connections. My role felt important, like I was actively contributing to my daughter's happiness rather than just providing financial support. The rehearsal dinner took place at the Seattle Art Museum, an elegant affair that showcased both families' appreciation for culture and sophistication. Marcus delivered a heartfelt speech about finding his soulmate and joining a family that had welcomed him with open arms. He specifically thanked me for my confidence in his business abilities and my support for their future together. The evening felt like a celebration of family unity and shared optimism about the bright future that awaited the young couple. Rebecca glowed with happiness, moving through the party like someone who had achieved everything she'd ever wanted. That night, I lay in bed thinking about the next day's ceremony and the new chapter it would represent for our family. Rebecca would officially become Mrs. Marcus Davidson, beginning married life with financial security and a husband who clearly adored her. My investment in Marcus's company was showing promising returns, with the potential acquisition creating wealth that could benefit them for decades. Everything had proceeded exactly as planned, with no complications or concerns to diminish the joy I felt about my daughter's future. Wedding morning arrived with perfect Seattle weather, clear skies, and mild temperatures that seemed to bless the celebration. I spent an hour getting ready, adjusting my tuxedo, and checking my appearance in the mirror. The anticipation felt wonderful, like Christmas morning combined with graduation day and every other significant celebration from Rebecca's childhood. I was going to walk my daughter down the aisle, officially transferring her care to a man who had earned my respect and affection over the past 8 months. The ride to the Fairmont Olympic Hotel took 15 minutes through downtown Seattle traffic. I arrived at the hotel's grand ballroom 2 hours before the ceremony was scheduled to begin, wanting to ensure that every detail met Rebecca's exacting standards. The space looked magnificent, with flower arrangements that had cost more than some people's cars and lighting that created an atmosphere of romantic elegance. Hotel staff moved efficiently through final preparations, adjusting table settings and testing sound systems with professional precision. Rebecca was supposed to meet me in the hotel's bridal suite at 1 p.m. for photos and final preparations before the 3 p.m. ceremony. When 1:15 passed without her arrival, I assumed she was running late due to hair and makeup appointments that had probably taken longer than expected. Brides were notorious for losing track of time during final preparations. I used the extra time to greet early arriving guests and ensure that Marcus's family was comfortable with the seating arrangements and ceremony logistics. By 1:45, my casual concern was shifting toward genuine worry. Rebecca had always been punctual, especially for important events. Missing her own wedding photography session was completely out of character. I called her cell phone repeatedly, but each call went directly to voicemail. The photographer was growing impatient, noting that we needed at least 30 minutes for the planned pre-ceremony portraits. Hotel staff offered to call her hotel room, but she wasn't registered at the Fairmont. She'd planned to get ready at her apartment and arrive at the hotel in her wedding dress. Marcus appeared in the lobby at 2:15, looking nervous but explaining that groom and bride weren't supposed to see each other before the ceremony. He claimed ignorance about Rebecca's whereabouts, suggesting that she was probably dealing with last-minute emergency with her dress or makeup. His casual attitude about his bride's absence struck me as strange, but I attributed it to different cultural approaches to wedding traditions. Some people were more relaxed about timing and logistics than Rebecca typically was. 2:30 p.m. arrived with still no word from Rebecca. Guests were beginning to take their seats in the grand ballroom, and the officiant was requesting confirmation that the ceremony would proceed as scheduled. My anxiety was building toward panic as I realized that something was seriously wrong. Rebecca would never voluntarily miss her own wedding without communication. She'd spent months planning every detail of this celebration. The possibility of an accident or emergency began to dominate my thinking. I drove to Rebecca's apartment building in Belltown, using my spare key to enter her unit and search for clues about her whereabouts. The apartment was empty, but showed signs of hasty departure. Clothes were scattered across her bedroom floor, and her makeup was spread across the bathroom counter as if she'd been interrupted during preparation. Her wedding dress hung in the closet, undisturbed and clearly unworn. The sight of that empty dress hit me like a physical blow, confirming that something had gone terribly wrong. Back at the hotel, I found Marcus pacing in the lobby, his earlier calm replaced by obvious agitation. He claimed to be as confused and worried as I was, but something in his demeanor felt performative rather than genuine. His concern seemed calculated, like an actor playing a role rather than a groom genuinely distraught about his missing bride. When I suggested calling the police to report Rebecca as missing, Marcus hesitated, arguing that we should wait a bit longer before involving authorities in what might be a simple misunderstanding. 3 p.m. passed with 200 wedding guests sitting in the grand ballroom, whispering among themselves and checking their phones for updates. The officiant approached me several times, asking for guidance about how long we should wait before acknowledging that the ceremony wasn't going to proceed as planned. Marcus continued his pacing, occasionally stepping outside to make phone calls that he claimed were attempts to reach Rebecca through mutual friends. But his body language suggested conversations more strategic than desperate. The awful realization began forming in my mind around 3:30 p.m. as I watched Marcus's performance of confused concern. His reactions felt wrong, like someone who knew more than he was revealing. The timing of Rebecca's disappearance, combined with Marcus's strange behavior, suggested possibilities that my parental instincts didn't want to consider. But my business experience had taught me to recognize deception, and every signal I was receiving pointed toward elaborate manipulation rather than genuine crisis. I excused myself and called my private investigator, David Kim, who'd handled background checks and due diligence for my company's major contracts. "David, I need you to investigate Marcus Davidson immediately. Check everything: his background, his business registration, his family in Portland. Something's very wrong, and I think I've been conned." David promised to begin research immediately and provide preliminary findings within hours. The conversation felt like betraying my family, but my growing suspicions demanded professional verification. Meanwhile, the wedding guests were growing restless and confused. Several people approached me asking if they should leave or continue waiting for the ceremony to begin. I made the painful decision to announce that the wedding was postponed due to circumstances beyond our control, without providing details that I didn't yet understand myself. The disappointment and confusion in the room was palpable, but I couldn't continue the charade when I was beginning to suspect that the entire relationship had been fraudulent. Marcus's reaction to my announcement was revealing. Instead of supporting the decision or suggesting alternatives, he became agitated and argumentative. He insisted that we should continue waiting, that Rebecca would appear with a reasonable explanation for her delay. His pushback felt like someone trying to prolong a deception rather than a worried groom accepting the reality of his bride's disappearance. The performance was beginning to crack under pressure. David Kim called back at 6 p.m. with preliminary findings that confirmed my worst fears. Marcus Davidson's business registration was legitimate, but the company had no employees, no office space, and no actual business operations. The Portland address for his parents led to a vacant lot. The phone number for Dr. Richard Davidson was disconnected. The entire family background that Marcus had presented was fabricated, complete with fake credentials and invented personal history. Further investigation revealed that Marcus's real name was Michael Chen, and he had a criminal record including fraud convictions in California and Nevada. He'd spent the past 3 years running romance scams and investment fraud schemes, targeting wealthy older men through their daughters or other family connections. The sophistication of his operation was impressive, involving fake business documents, manufactured family background, and carefully scripted emotional manipulation designed to extract maximum financial benefit from trusting victims. The discovery that I'd been conned was devastating, but the realization that Rebecca was involved hit me like a physical assault. David's investigation revealed that Rebecca had been living with Marcus for 6 months before their supposed first meeting, and that she'd provided detailed information about my business assets and personal weaknesses that Marcus had used to customize his approach. My own daughter had participated in a calculated scheme to defraud me of $500,000. Phone records showed extensive communication between Rebecca and Marcus during periods when they claimed to barely know each other. Financial records revealed that Rebecca had been receiving regular payments from Marcus throughout their supposed courtship, compensation for her role in the deception. Bank surveillance footage showed them together at various locations weeks before their supposed introduction, demonstrating that their entire relationship was a business partnership designed to exploit my paternal love and trust. The wedding venue, the engagement ring, the elaborate preparations, all of it had been theater designed to justify the timeline needed to extract maximum money from my accounts. Rebecca's emotional performances, her apparent happiness, her gratitude for my investment in Marcus's business, everything had been calculated manipulation designed to keep me writing checks until they'd accumulated enough money to disappear permanently. By 8 p.m., I was sitting alone in the empty grand ballroom, surrounded by $50,000 worth of flowers and decorations for a wedding that had never been intended to happen. The champagne fountain continued bubbling cheerfully, a grotesque soundtrack to the complete destruction of everything I'd believed about my relationship with my daughter. The magnitude of the betrayal was almost impossible to process. 25 years of fatherhood erased by a criminal conspiracy that had used my love as a weapon against me. David's continued investigation revealed the scope of their operation. Rebecca and Marcus had been planning this scheme for over a year, researching my business operations, social connections, and personal vulnerabilities. They'd identified my grief over my wife's death and my desire to ensure Rebecca's financial security as the optimal emotional levers for their fraud. Every conversation, every family dinner, every moment of apparent intimacy had been scripted to advance their criminal agenda. The fake business documentation was remarkably sophisticated, involving purchased corporate registrations, manufactured financial records, and hired actors who played the roles of beta testing customers during video calls. Marcus had invested significant money in creating believable props for his deception, understanding that wealthy marks required more elaborate scams than typical fraud victims. The attention to detail was almost admirable in its completeness and professionalism. Most painfully, I learned that Rebecca's emotional displays had been rehearsed and practiced. David obtained video surveillance from restaurants where she'd met with Marcus to coordinate their story and practice their performances. Watching my daughter laugh while discussing how to manipulate my grief and extract more money was the most devastating moment of my entire life. The woman I'd raised and loved had become a stranger capable of calculated cruelty that defied comprehension. The police investigation that followed was thorough and ultimately successful. Marcus was arrested at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, attempting to board a flight to Brazil with $400,000 in cash and fake identification documents. Rebecca was taken into custody at a luxury hotel in Vancouver, where she'd been waiting for confirmation that their escape plan was proceeding smoothly. Their attempted flight from justice provided additional evidence of their guilt and criminal intent. The trial process was emotionally devastating, but legally straightforward. The evidence of their fraud was overwhelming, documented through financial records, surveillance footage, and recorded conversations that David's investigation had uncovered. Rebecca's participation was clearly established through phone records, financial transactions, and witness testimony from hotel staff who'd observed her coordinating with Marcus during periods when they claimed to be strangers. Both Rebecca and Marcus were convicted of fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering charges that carried substantial prison sentences. Rebecca received 8 years in federal prison, while Marcus was sentenced to 12 years due to his criminal history and leadership role in the scheme. The court ordered full restitution, though recovering the stolen money proved difficult since much of it had been spent on the elaborate deception and lifestyle maintenance during their fraud operation. The media attention was humiliating, but ultimately helpful in warning other potential victims about sophisticated romance and investment scams. My story was featured in several business publications and law enforcement bulletins as an example of how criminals exploit family relationships and emotional vulnerabilities to commit financial fraud. Speaking publicly about my experience was painful, but necessary to prevent others from suffering similar betrayals. Rebuilding my life after such comprehensive betrayal required professional counseling and significant time. The discovery that my daughter had participated in my victimization was more devastating than the financial loss, challenging my fundamental understanding of family relationships and parental love. Learning to trust again, even in simple business relationships, required months of careful emotional reconstruction and professional support. The $500,000 loss was financially manageable but emotionally devastating. More significant was the cost of the wedding preparations, legal fees, and private investigation expenses that totaled nearly $200,000 in additional losses. The financial impact was substantial but survivable for someone with my business success and accumulated wealth. The emotional impact proved much more difficult to recover from. Completely. 2 years later, I received a letter from Rebecca in federal prison attempting to explain her actions and request forgiveness for her participation in the fraud. The letter was filled with justifications about feeling neglected during her childhood, resentment about my business success, and claims that Marcus had manipulated her into participating in his scheme. Reading her words was painful, but I recognized the same manipulation techniques she'd used during the fraud itself. I never responded to Rebecca's letter or attempted to visit her during her incarceration. The relationship we'd shared was based on deception, and I couldn't rebuild trust with someone who demonstrated such calculated cruelty. When she was released from prison, she attempted to contact me several times, but I'd moved and changed my contact information. Some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive, regardless of family relationships. Marcus died in prison 3 years into his sentence, killed by another inmate during a dispute unrelated to his fraud convictions. The news brought no satisfaction or sense of justice, just confirmation that his criminal lifestyle had ultimately led to the violent end that such choices often produce. Rebecca was released after serving 6 years of her sentence, but I have no knowledge of her current whereabouts or circumstances. The experience taught me valuable lessons about the intersection of love and business, the importance of independent verification even in family relationships, and the reality that some people are capable of betraying anyone for financial gain. My approach to personal relationships became more cautious, but I refused to let their betrayal transform me into someone incapable of trust or generosity with people who deserve both. 5 years after the failed wedding, I established a foundation that provides support for fraud victims and education about sophisticated scams that target family relationships. The foundation has helped hundreds of people recover from financial and emotional trauma caused by romance fraud, investment scams, and other crimes that exploit trust and love. Converting my painful experience into resources that help others provided meaning that partially offset the betrayal's lasting damage. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.